In the glittering world of luxury, where wealth buys everything but happiness, a story of betrayal and greed unfolds. William Everhart, a billionaire cruise line magnate known for his charm and ruthless business acumen, finds himself at the mercy of fate after a severe accident leaves him on the brink of death. Confined to the sterile, cold environment of an ICU, William clings to life, his body battered, and his mind trapped in the haze of painkillers and beeping monitors. His wife, Vanessa Everhart, the epitome of elegance and sophistication, is the one person everyone expects to be by his side. However, in a shocking twist, Vanessa does the unthinkable. She turns her back on her husband, abandoning him in his darkest hour. The nurses are perplexed by her absence, but it's not until the police are called that the true extent of Vanessa's betrayal begins to unravel. The police arrive at the Everhart's sprawling estate, a mansion that exudes wealth and power with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and walls adorned with priceless art. As they step inside, they expect to find a grieving wife, perhaps overwhelmed by the tragedy. Instead, they find something far more disturbing. Vanessa is not in mourning. She is in control. The grand living room is filled with the latest technology. Multiple computer screens display advanced project management software, complex financial charts, and cryptocurrency accounts with staggering balances. Among the luxury, there is a cold, calculated air about the place. The police notice the meticulousness of her work, the precision with which she manages her digital empire. They quickly realize they are not dealing with a typical housewife. As they dig deeper, with the help of a seasoned financial advisor and the intricate capabilities of Microsoft Project, the police start piecing together the puzzle. Vanessa had been meticulously planning for months, if not years. William's accident was no mere twist of fate. It was the culmination of a carefully orchestrated plan. The financial advisor reveals that Vanessa had been quietly moving assets into offshore accounts, investing heavily in cryptocurrencies, and setting up shell companies. The goal was clear: to leave William with nothing. The accident, which at first appeared to be a stroke of bad luck, was now suspected to be something far more sinister. Through painstaking investigation, the police uncover the chilling motive. Vanessa had grown tired of her husband's controlling ways and had been planning her escape, but not without securing her own financial empire first. She had used William's wealth and influence to build her own hidden fortune, ensuring that when she left him to die, she would not only be free of him, but also in complete control of his legacy. The investigation takes a turn when they discover a message left by Vanessa on one of the computers, addressed to William. In it, she coldly details her plans, explaining how she had manipulated him, waited for the perfect moment, and how his death would be the final step in her rise to power. She had no intention of grieving, only of thriving in the world she had built for herself. When confronted, Vanessa shows no remorse. To her, it was simply business, a calculated decision to eliminate the man who stood in her way. As the police take her into custody, the reality of her actions sinks in. She had destroyed her husband, not just physically, but emotionally and financially, all for the sake of power and independence. William, once a symbol of success and invincibility, lies alone in his hospital bed, unaware of the betrayal that sealed his fate. Vanessa, who had vowed to love and cherish him, now faces a future behind bars, her empire crumbling as quickly as it had risen. Vanessa Everhart had not always been the cold, calculating woman she now appeared to be. Born into a modest family, she had spent her early years dreaming of a life far removed from the one she knew, a life of luxury, influence, and control. When she met William Everhart, she thought her dreams had finally come true. He was charismatic, ambitious, and most importantly, wealthy beyond imagination. Their whirlwind romance was the stuff of fairy tales, and soon, Vanessa found herself in a world she had only ever fantasized about. But as the years went by, Vanessa realized that the price of this life was her freedom. William was not the Prince Charming she had imagined, but a man obsessed with power and control. He dictated every aspect of their lives, from the way she dressed to the friends she could keep. The walls of their opulent mansion became her gilded cage, and Vanessa found herself longing for the independence she had once cherished. It was during these years of quiet desperation that Vanessa began to devise her plan. It started with small steps, learning about cryptocurrency, understanding the intricacies of finance, and secretly opening accounts in her name. But as William's dominance grew, so did her resolve. She would not be just another one of his possessions. She would break free, and she would do so on her own terms. William, oblivious to the storm brewing within his own home, continued to expand his empire. His cruise line was his pride and joy, a symbol of his success, and he spent most of his time traveling between board meetings, luxury events, and his numerous estates across the globe. He loved Vanessa in his own way, but to him, love was just another form of ownership. He saw her as a beautiful accessory to his life, something to be shown off at parties, a silent partner in his grand game of life. Vanessa played her part well. She smiled when needed, attended events, and played the role of the perfect wife. But behind her polished exterior, she was orchestrating a plan so intricate that even William, with all his business acumen, would never have seen it coming. She began diverting funds, investing in high-risk ventures that only she controlled, and using William's name and reputation to build a hidden fortune. Her plan was almost complete when fate handed her the perfect opportunity. The accident happened on a rainy night as William was returning from a gala. The car skidded off the road, crashing into a ditch. He was found hours later, unconscious, and rushed to the hospital. The doctors were not hopeful. The injuries were severe, and the chances of recovery slim. Vanessa, upon hearing the news, made a decision that would seal William's fate. She visited the hospital once, ensuring that her presence was noted by the staff. Then she vanished. As William lay comatose, clinging to life, Vanessa began executing the final phase of her plan. She contacted her financial advisors, transferred the last of the funds, and set in motion the events that would dismantle William's empire, piece by piece. When the police arrived at the Everhart mansion, they were prepared for the worst. They had been informed of Vanessa's disappearance and William's critical condition, and they expected to find a woman driven to madness by grief. What they found instead was far more chilling. The house was empty, but there was no sign of distress. Everything was in its place, from the designer furniture to the expensive artwork. The only thing out of the ordinary was the array of technology set up in the living room. Multiple screens displayed financial data, cryptocurrency markets, and project management software. It was clear that Vanessa had been meticulously planning something. But what? The financial advisor, who had worked with William for years, was called in to assist. Together with the police, he began unraveling the web of transactions and investments that Vanessa had created. What they discovered was a scheme so elaborate, it took them days to fully comprehend it. Vanessa had not only been siphoning off William's wealth, but she had also been building an entirely separate financial empire, using his resources to do so. Every move she made was calculated, every decision deliberate. She had diversified her investments across multiple markets, using cryptocurrencies to hide the trail. She had set up shell companies, funneled money through offshore accounts, and even used William's own business connections to further her goals. The police were stunned by the complexity of the operation and the cold, emotionless way in which it had been executed. With the evidence mounting against her, the police knew they had to find Vanessa before she disappeared for good. They traced her movements through her financial transactions, leading them to a secluded villa in the south of France. It was a place William had bought years ago, but one he rarely visited. When the police arrived, they found Vanessa living in luxury, far removed from the tragedy she had left behind. Vanessa did not resist when they took her into custody. She remained calm, composed, and even smiled as they placed her in handcuffs. To her, this was just another part of the game. She had anticipated this moment, prepared for it, and in her mind, she had already won. But as the police escorted her away, they knew there was more to this story than just financial gain. During questioning, Vanessa revealed the true nature of her plan. She had never intended to kill William. she simply wanted to be free of him. The accident had been a stroke of luck, a chance for her to accelerate her plans. She admitted to manipulating him, to using his wealth to build her empire, but she denied any involvement in the accident itself. But the police weren't convinced. The financial advisor had uncovered a series of payments to a shadowy figure, someone who specialized in making problems disappear. The evidence suggested that Vanessa had not only planned to take William's fortune, but had also ensured he would never recover from the accident. The final pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and it painted a picture of a woman who would stop at nothing to achieve her goals. As the trial approached, the world watched with bated breath. The case of William and Vanessa Everhart had become a media sensation, with every detail of their lives dissected and analyzed. Vanessa's calm demeanor and her unapologetic attitude only fueled the public's fascination. But behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. The financial advisor, who had been instrumental in uncovering Vanessa's plot, began to have doubts about the narrative the police were constructing. He delved deeper into the financial transactions, searching for something he might have missed. What he found was a twist no one saw coming. It turned out that Vanessa had been manipulated too. The shadowy figure she had been paying was not just a hitman, but someone with ties to William's business rivals. Vanessa had been led to believe she was in control, but in reality, she was a pawn in a much larger game. William's rivals had orchestrated the accident, knowing that Vanessa would take the fall. They had used her desperation and ambition against her, ensuring that when the dust settled, both William and Vanessa would be out of the picture, leaving the field open for them. When this information came to light, the entire case shifted. Vanessa, once seen as the mastermind, was now revealed to be a victim of her own greed and the machinations of those more ruthless than her. The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom, turning the trial on its head. In the end, Vanessa was convicted, but not for murder. She was sentenced for financial crimes, her empire dismantled, and her wealth seized. William, who miraculously survived the ordeal, was left to rebuild his life, now aware of the treacherous world he had once controlled. The rivals, whose involvement was suspected but never proven, walked away unscathed, having played their part to perfection. Years later, William Everhart, now a shadow of the man he once was, found peace in a life far removed from the luxury and power he once craved. He dedicated his remaining years to philanthropy, using what was left of his fortune to help those less fortunate. The experience had changed him, stripping away his arrogance and leaving him with a sense of humility he had never known. Vanessa, serving her sentence, had plenty of time to reflect on her choices. The woman who had once been driven by ambition and a desire for control now saw the folly in her actions. She had lost everything: her freedom, her wealth, and the man she once loved, even if that love had been twisted by the world they lived in. William Everhart's return to the world was met with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. Many saw him as a victim of a cruel plot, while others whispered that his fall was the inevitable consequence of a life built on ruthless ambition. His recovery was slow, both physically and emotionally. The once powerful magnate now struggled with the realization that his empire had crumbled, and the people he had trusted most had betrayed him. The media circus surrounding the trial had faded, but William found no peace in the quiet that followed. The mansion, once bustling with staff and lavish parties, now stood empty, a mausoleum to a life that no longer existed. He spent his days in solitude, grappling with the memories of his rise to power and the choices that had led to his downfall. In the months following the trial, William began to reevaluate his life. The luxury, the power, the control, it had all been an illusion. He realized that he had built his empire not on a foundation of strength, but on a fragile structure of manipulation and dominance. His wealth had isolated him, turning friends into enemies and love into possession. Seeking redemption, William decided to take a different path. He sold off what remained of his business, using the proceeds to establish a charitable foundation dedicated to helping those in need. It was his way of making amends for the harm he had caused, a small attempt to balance the scales of his life. But even as he tried to rebuild, the shadows of his past continued to haunt him. Meanwhile, Vanessa Everhart's time in prison was a harsh reminder of the life she had left behind. The opulence and luxury were gone, replaced by the cold reality of confinement. The woman who had once controlled vast sums of money and orchestrated intricate financial schemes now had nothing but time. Time to think, time to regret, and time to wonder how everything had gone so wrong. Vanessa was a model prisoner, keeping to herself and avoiding trouble. She spent hours in the prison library, devouring books on finance, psychology, and law, trying to understand the motivations that had driven her to such extremes. But no amount of knowledge could erase the guilt that gnawed at her. She had betrayed the man she once loved, and in doing so, had destroyed not just his life, but her own. As the years passed, Vanessa found herself increasingly introspective. She began writing in a journal, documenting her thoughts and emotions, trying to piece together the woman she had once been with the person she had become. The process was painful, forcing her to confront the lies she had told herself and the truths she had avoided. But it was also cathartic, allowing her to slowly come to terms with her actions. In her writings, Vanessa often returned to the moment when she had made the decision to leave William in the ICU. It was a decision that had defined her life, and she struggled to understand why she had made it. Was it out of fear, out of anger, or was it simply the culmination of years of resentment and frustration? The answer eluded her, but she knew one thing for certain: she would never be the same person again. While William and Vanessa grappled with their new realities, the true masterminds behind the scheme, William's business rivals, continued to operate in the shadows. They had orchestrated the downfall of the Everharts with precision, using Vanessa as a pawn in their game of corporate warfare. But their victory was not complete. The rivals, led by a cunning and ruthless CEO named Victor Armitage, had hoped to dismantle William's empire and seize his assets. But William's decision to sell off his remaining businesses and use the money for charity had thwarted their plans. The rivals were left with nothing but the satisfaction of having destroyed a competitor, a hollow victory that did little to advance their own ambitions. Frustrated by their incomplete success, Victor began to turn his attention to other ventures. But the events of the past continued to weigh on him. The scheme had been too close, too risky, and the consequences too unpredictable. Victor had prided himself on his ability to control every aspect of his business, but the Everhart affair had shown him just how fragile that control could be. As Victor expanded his empire, he kept a close eye on William, wary of any attempts at revenge. He knew that William was no longer a threat, but the specter of their rivalry lingered. Victor's paranoia grew, leading him to make increasingly erratic decisions. His empire, once a model of efficiency and power, began to show cracks, and those closest to him started to question his leadership. Years passed, and the world moved on from the Everhart scandal. But for William and Vanessa, the scars remained. William's charitable foundation had grown, providing aid to thousands of people around the world. He found solace in his work, dedicating himself to helping others and trying to make up for the mistakes of his past. But despite his efforts, the guilt and regret never fully left him. Vanessa, too, had changed. Her time in prison had forced her to confront her demons, and she emerged a different person. Upon her release, she had nothing: no money, no power, and no place in the world she once ruled. But she was determined to start anew. She took a job at a small financial firm, using her knowledge to help others rather than exploit them. It was a far cry from the life she had known, but it was honest work, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. As fate would have it, William and Vanessa's paths would cross once more. It happened at a charity event, one of the many that William now attended as part of his philanthropic work. Vanessa, who had been invited by a former colleague, did not expect to see him there. When their eyes met across the room, there was a moment of silence, a pause in time where the weight of their shared history pressed down on them. Neither knew what to say. The wounds were still fresh, the memories too painful. But in that moment, something passed between them an understanding, perhaps, or a sense of closure. They had both been victims of their own choices, and while they could never undo the past, they could at least acknowledge it. As William and Vanessa began to rebuild their lives, Victor Armitage's empire continued to unravel. His paranoia and obsession with control had led to a series of disastrous decisions, alienating his allies and weakening his position. The once mighty corporation he had built was now teetering on the brink of collapse. In a last-ditch effort to save his company, Victor resorted to increasingly desperate measures. He engaged in risky financial deals, cutthroat mergers, and even attempted to manipulate the stock market. But each move only brought him closer to ruin. The very tactics he had used to destroy William were now turning against him, and he found himself trapped in a web of his own making. The final blow came when one of Victor's closest advisors turned against him, exposing his illegal activities to the authorities. The ensuing investigation led to a public scandal, and Victor was forced to step down from his position. His empire crumbled, and he was left with nothing but the knowledge that he had been the architect of his own destruction. For William and Vanessa, the news of Victor's downfall was a bittersweet victory. They had both suffered at his hands, but in the end, it was his own greed and ambition that had led to his demise. The cycle of betrayal and revenge had come full circle, and the two of them were finally free to move on. With Victor Armitage out of the picture, William and Vanessa were finally able to close the chapter on their past. They continued their respective journeys of redemption, each finding their own way to make amends for the choices they had made. William's charitable foundation flourished, becoming one of the most respected organizations in the world. He dedicated his life to helping others, using his wealth and influence to make a positive difference. Though the guilt of his past never fully left him, he found peace in knowing that he was doing everything he could to right the wrongs he had committed. Vanessa, too, found her place in the world. She continued to work in finance, using her skills to small businesses and entrepreneurs. She no longer sought power or control, but instead found fulfillment in the simple act of helping others succeed. Her life was no longer defined by luxury or ambition, but by the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had made a difference. The two of them remained in contact, their relationship forever changed by the events they had endured. They were not friends, nor were they enemies, just two people who had been through hell and come out the other side. They had both learned valuable lessons about the dangers of greed, the importance of redemption, and the true meaning of power. In the end, William and Vanessa Everhart was not just one of betrayal and revenge, but of redemption and rebirth. It was a reminder that no matter how far one falls, there is always a chance to rise again. And though their journey had been a difficult one, they had both emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate for it. Hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to subscribe.